Hello, and welcome to the Convo, a weekly series presented by Leadership Indianapolis, where we talk to leaders in the city of Indianapolis to learn about what helps them survive and thrive during this time. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Terri Jett of Butler University. She serves as political science and peace and conflicts of the Peace and Conflict Studies Department. Hi, Dr. Jett, how are you?
I'm good. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk with you also. So recently, you had a very exciting announcement and update happen in your professional life with being named full professor at Butler University. And this is also a historic move as well. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, yes, of course. And so I am the first Black woman at Butler University to rise to the rank of full professor. And for those that aren't familiar with academia, you start off as an assistant professor if you're on the tenure track. And then after some years, 6 or so, you're promoted to associate professor and typically tenured at that time. And then sometime after that, whenever you decide to go up, usually within 7 or 8 years or so, you become a full professor. Took me a little bit longer than that, but that's because I had a lot of different other responsibilities. And sometimes I'm not as quick to do my research as a lot of other people because I'm doing other stuff. I have a lot of, irons in the fire. But it really was just an amazing moment, not just for me, but also for my family.
Wow.
Because that's how I celebrate my achievements. That's how our family celebrates, especially our educational achievements. And so it's not just individual, it's the whole family that achieve that. So yeah, it was very exciting to be able to deliver that news to my parents who are in California.
That is incredible. And I really identify with that concept of it being the whole family, because when I think about when I graduated, it was that same way. And I think it's like that for a lot of communities of color and the Black community, especially, of that shared celebration when one of us achieves something. What are your thoughts around, Butler is an institution that has been around for quite some time, and you being the first Black woman to make it to this prestigious level. What are your thoughts around why it took so long for that to happen?
Yeah, it's because it is a difficult place as a predominantly white institution. And I would say that is the case for most academic environments that have predominantly white populations, whether they're small or sort of master's level, smaller liberal arts schools like Butler or Research One institutions. Black women in particular are maybe about 3% of all full professors of all the full professors in the country.
Wow.
And so it's difficult generally to rise to that level. You have to really persevere. There's a lot of things that you have to face that, a lot of people of color and marginalized people face in various organizational institutions. And so it's about understanding how to navigate the environment and what you're willing to sacrifice and put up with it. How bad do you want that? With Butler, it was, it's certainly kind of challenging because it was founded by an abolitionist, and I actually co-chair Founders Week every year, and I celebrate the values of Ovid Butler and what he stood for. It was an institution that was open to Black people and women. One of the, I think it was about the third in the country, especially at that time, 1855. And so that is an incredible tradition to have and incredible history to stand on. Why it took so long for them to have a Black professor, a female, rise to the level for professor is because it's just difficult in academia to actually persevere through that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that people like yourself are in a very, very unique position to help speak to or help us to understand some of the things that we are going through right now in our country, especially when it comes to social justice issues. So what do you think is the role of Black intellectuals and those that fall into these different intersections of justice and coming from different faith backgrounds in addressing some of the racial issues that we're experiencing right now, or have been experiencing for some time, actually.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of us kind of pursue intellectual life because of some of the injustices that we witnessed as children, or that our family spoke of or experienced. And I actually think it is the responsibility of Black intellectuals, and I'm not just talking about those of us that have degrees that are, situated in institutions. I define intellectuals rather loosely, but I think that Black people, you need to use all of their talents and gifts, and it should be cultivated for the betterment of their community. I was raised that way and trained that way. I also pursued educational skills that would allow me to kind of speak to what I see is a problem. And if I were to have, some sort of solution or something that I think should be suggested in terms of resolution, resolving some of the things that we're going through, then I feel a responsibility to speak out. And also, I don't claim to represent all the Black people, but I have a passion for my people. And I think that means something. There is a book that I read in graduate school, and I went to Auburn University in Alabama for my PhD. That was absolutely great training ground for facing any sort of academic institution.
I can only imagine.
And yeah, the Deep South will train you to go anywhere. But while I was there, I studied a book that was co-authored by Cornel West and Bell Hooks about Black intellectuals, insurgent Black intellectual life. And there it really talked about the role that we have to navigate both the academic environment, but then also not to get too distant away from our own people, that we are unrecognizable. And so that is something that kind of governs the way that I engage inside the classroom and outside. And any of my students, regardless of their background, will tell you or anyone that, yeah, I'm pretty much the same in the classroom as I am on the courthouse steps or wherever I am engaging in, some sort of conversation or dialogue.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. On the point of responsibility, you talked about the responsibility of the intellectual community, specifically of Black intellectuals. What do you think is the role of anchor institutions like universities? Having been born and raised in Indianapolis, we talked a lot about the Butler bubble when I was growing up. And even though I've spent a lot of time in that neighborhood where Butler is located, the campus itself was like a whole nother world, situated inside of, a neighborhood that has, stately homes, and it's also the ghetto. So I just, I'm curious to understand your perspective about what role or responsibility anchor institutions have to the greater community in which they're housed.
Oh, yeah. Well, we certainly can't turn a blind eye to anything that's happening in our surroundings. And it is our responsibility to be very much engaged in what is taking place in the neighborhood. And I actually like to see the children in the neighborhood, see Butler as also being a part kind of their home. And so I have said quite a bit that for me, it is embarrassing that we have an elementary school that is within our reach that is not doing so well, and that we have to do something about it. I do some things with the Martin Luther King Community Center, which I have a lot of affection for. And I know that some of the children that go to that particular school that I'm talking about, which is School 43, that they also go to Martin Luther King Center. And then there's also kind of and I'm forgetting exactly the location. I'm always wrong with the streets. I don't know if it's 40th or 42nd and Boulevard, but there's kind of a Black business kind of development happening.
Oh, I know exactly where you
mean.
I get my hair cut there and buy soap there.
Right, there you go. Yeah, so I have really thought that, okay, we should be touching on that too. Where the challenge lies is that I don't believe that we should, Butler as a predominantly white institution has come in as some sort of savior and have that approach. I think there should be partnerships that are developed, that we cultivate, and that we collectively use all of our ideas and our visions about what that neighborhood should be. I also know that there are some unsolved homicides in that neighborhood, which have sat with me for ever since they happened. And so we have to figure out what we can do to address that and to prevent anything like that from happening again. I tried to, and actually I am trying again, put in a program called Books and Breakfast at the Martin Luther King Community Center, which was started by Hands Up United in Ferguson. And it's where you get people together to talk about a book and have breakfast together. And I did it for a couple of years, and it was a way to get people from different backgrounds. And I brought my students there too, to connect to the neighborhood, to take ownership of it, to think about what we need to do to address all of the different concerns that are happening. So if I can do a shameless plug, I will be doing a virtual July 11th at 10 a.m. conversation and discussion about Native Son, which is a powerful book that speaks to so many things that we're facing right now.
An enlightening conversation for a lot of people. As we wrap up, I ask everybody this question, but you mentioned all of the different things that we're going through right now. We're in the midst of a global pandemic. I'm almost to the point where I'm tired of saying the words global pandemic, because I say them every week, multiple times a week. But that's where we are. And all of the other things that you mentioned that we're going through. As a leader in the community, and also, you know, in your world of academia, what are some of the lessons that have helped you survive and thrive during this time?
Well, my main lesson is something that I learned from my grandfather, and that is to be still. And so I've had to, and the pandemic has allowed for quite a bit of that. I have to think about what is happening and not just readily jump into something thinking I have the solution. And so for me, the lesson, and also as, you know, sort of a middle-aged woman, my lesson has been, especially with regard to the protests and things that are happening, is to kind of maybe take a step back and figure out how I could be of support to those that have the capacity to be on the front line. I don't have the capacity to do that right now, so I have to think about other ways that I can engage. But also that there are ways to think about this situation and to embrace it. And so I have actually enjoyed some of the solitude that has come with this pandemic. I've engaged in some self-care and reflection.
Always good.
And that is always good. And sometimes it's good to have that space to do that. And so I am just thankful to God that I have a good space that I control and own, and that allows me the freedom and the liberation to think very creatively. So yeah, that's probably a lot, but
well, it gives us a lot to work with, which is always helpful.
Okay, good.
Yes. Dr. Jett, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and all of the work that you're doing in the community. We definitely appreciate it.
Well, same here. I always love seeing everything that you're doing, which is a lot. You're an intellectual too.
Well, that's saying a lot coming from you, so I'll have to add that to my bio. Dr. Terri Jett said.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you to each one of you for tuning in for this week's Convo. Have a great day and a positive week.